All right, let's continue then with fundamental structures, and the second one we're going to study is the tendon. The tendon is perhaps the most commonly evaluated structure in musculoskeletal ultrasound, and to identify it properly, we need to start from this anatomical dissection pattern and histological pattern. If you remember this image, you'll understand that in ultrasound, the transverse section depends on us identifying this very homogeneous and well-defined pattern, just like in the long axis or longitudinal section. These tissues, which are rich in fibers, will produce very well-organized layers. That's how we're going to identify them. So in the longitudinal view, you see a pattern of well-organized hyperechoic layers. This also varies depending on the type of tendon. Some even have, within the different layers, a bit more liquid or fatty content, like the quadriceps tendon, and in the transverse view as well. So we're going to locate some very well-organized fibrous fascicles, which will allow us to identify this image that we call salt and pepper in the transverse view. So the first concept for identification, a tendon in the transverse view. Let's look for a salt and pepper, which is this well-organized pattern of fibrous hyperechoic image with very, very, very fine anechoic areas. Salt and pepper image, tendons in transverse view. Let's identify alternating anechoic and hyperechoic images with a small fibrillar appearance. Let's take a closer look here. Look at the pattern of tendons in transverse view, salt and pepper, very well organized, dense images, alternating with anechoic images. The organization of this structure, which is very similar to histology, is what will later allow us to differentiate whether this is normal or pathological. Here's another example then, in transverse view, a laminar, well-organized pattern in longitudinal view, and in transverse, the salt and pepper pattern is very uniform. Transverse pattern, as we said, well-organized lamina, and in transverse, the salt and pepper pattern. Again here, in our wrist, we identify the salt and pepper pattern in the tendons in the transverse view. Let's look at it in this other diagram, in a knee. So we would already identify, we know how to identify the bone with its posterior acoustic shadow. And in transverse, the fibrillar images are well organized. Let's look at it here on the ultrasound. So this is a patellar tendon. Very hyperechoic images, but very well organized, representing this anatomical segment. It can be seen in great detail, and we can identify the other structures according to the echogenic patterns we already know. So tendon in transverse structure, very well organized fibrillar structure. If you remember the histological drawing we showed at the beginning, this is very similar. This is a calcaneus, and the image of the tendon would be this, some very well organized fibrillar images. This is a criterion for a tendon. Healthy. We will also see it when it is pathological. We will analyze the same sequence. So tendon anatomical structure is fundamental.